The global semiconductor industry has a very strong growth since the second half in 2020. Here comes three reasons. One is the notebook demands driven by the pandemic. Second is the recovery of smartphone and the automotive industry that requires more semiconductors. The third reason is the US-China trade war that caused order transfer effect. In addition to this demands occurred in the second half of 2020. There's a background demand needs for from the 5G, AI, IoT, and the vehicle technologies. These demands will be a very steady increase of semiconductor usage. So we expect this demand will extend into year 2022 or even longer. So the forecast for global semiconductor market will continue to grow from the year 2020, 2021 to 2022. Now into the Taiwan semiconductor industry sectors. We divide industry sectors into IC design, memory, foundry, packaging, and testing. The growth in semiconductor industry also show growth in Taiwan's semiconductor industry sectors. Additional to the global growth, as 80% of the notebooks were assembled by Taiwanese companies. So the chips for notebooks are mainly produced by Taiwan's IC design house and foundries. So the growth in the second half of 2020 has even bigger in the Taiwan. And this momentum was carried over to year 2021. So we see the imbalanced semiconductor supply and demand in the first half of this year. We can see that recently the smartphone and notebooks, the sales forecast for the smartphone and notebooks are seeing adjustment probably in the second half of this year. So the demands of driven by the previous three reasons probably will go down a little bit, but the background demand from 5G, AI, IoT, and vehicle technologies will continue to support the demands for semiconductors. So here we list shows you the distribution of semiconductor work specialization. After more than 30 years of work specialization, we can see that now foundries and IC packaging testing capacity is basically focused in Asia. And this kind of focus of capacity will face challenges of natural disasters such as earthquakes, typhoons, and also face threats from regional political tension. So governments worldwide are thinking about trying to develop regional resilient semiconductor supply chain. So here we can see that on the left bottom side, we list different countries have different policy incentives for semiconductor supply. So these incentives include R&D investment, tax benefits, and fab construction subsidies. So we can see some examples right now. For example, recently the announcement of US, Japan, and US, Korea cooperation in the semiconductor supply chain, and also in European Union recent announcement to have alliance of semiconductor supply. These are all examples for local or regional semiconductor supply chain establishment. So we can see that semiconductor supply chain is changing its deployment worldwide. In addition to the government's efforts, we can see chip makers are also making their own efforts to meet the global demand. For example, in IDM companies, NSP, NVIDIA, Intel, and Samsung all started their new fab construction or mass production in 2020 and 2021. In foundries, TSMC recently started its 12-inch fab in Arizona already. And then it also announced expansion of 12-inch fab in Nanjing, China to make 28 nanometer processes. In addition to TSMC, Powerchip, UMC, SMIC, Global Foundries, all these other foundries are also started their fab construction plan in the first half 2021. However, as we just mentioned, this production to mass production this new capacity, we need probably 1.5 to 2 years. So we can expect that the capacity, the newly added capacity, will not take effect until around year 2023. So we just talked about the global and Taiwan semiconductor trends. Let's get into the demand side. These new emerging technologies will have more needs for semiconductors. One emerging technology is the 5G. The 5th generation of mobile network now has been in operation in more than 60 countries worldwide. And also more infrastructure are constructed on the way. So we see that 5G will boost semiconductor demand in several aspects. One is the cell phone adoption. Another is the infrastructure construction, and also the mobile edge computing deployment. So more semiconductor device will be used in 5G and 5G's applications. Another emerging technology is the combination of AI and IoT. Right now, we see that from the cloud, edge, and the terminal or endpoint architecture, there will be more application, more diverse applications in the end user side. So the devices for end users or the IoT devices will have more needs in different kind of operation or computing forms. So we see IoT chips will need more computing power and also different levels of data processing, analysis, and AI inference capabilities. So there's the diversified needs for IoT chips will also boost the demand for semiconductors. The third emerging technology comes from the automotive industry. There's a strong trend in the so-called case in the automotive electronics. C is for connected, A is for autonomous, S is for sharing or services, E is for electrified. So from the internal combustion engine, the traditional car, to electrified car with connected function or autonomous functions, there will be more semiconductor used. So here on the right, we show the cost construction structure for a L3 electric vehicle. So we can see that, we can see that it takes about $3,000 per car for a general internal combustion engine car to have semiconductors to cover functions such as light control, rain brush, or display in the vehicle. So is this case trend, we can see that more semiconductor will be needed for a car, and we can see the increase in semiconductor cost is almost more than double. So this case trend will drive semiconductor usage in cars even more than ever. So for this emerging applications, what are the business opportunities for Taiwan's companies? First, let's look at 5G. For 5G, Taiwanese companies' business opportunities come from the Open RAN. Here we show the architecture for Open RAN deployment. From the core network to backhaul to radio access, Taiwan's companies will have opportunities in white box servers, switches, and routers. So this is the strength for Taiwan's ICT companies. So we can expect that more opportunities for semiconductor sales along with this 5G Open RAN. The second opportunity comes from the IoT or AIoT. The Taiwanese government is promoting IoT vertical applications through this called Smart City Taiwan project. So we can see a different usage of IoT devices in smart factory, smart security, smart healthcare, smart education, and smart agriculture and smart transportation. All this will increase the use of semiconductors in different forms.